what's up? How's it going? My name is Lauren, and today I'm here to talk about some books and to talk about some cities. So one of the best things about reading is that it allows you to travel to new places, but what better way to experience those places while you're at home than by reading some books that are inspired by those cities? I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot, and each city that I go to has its own personality, its own characteristics, its own special features that make that city really special and bring it to life. So today I thought I would match some books up to those cities and recommend them to you based on how I feel they really capture the essence of those places. The first city I want to talk about is Las Vegas, baby! I went to Las Vegas in January for a couple of days and had a really great time. I did all of the touristy things. Some of the highlights were being served alcohol by a robot bartender, walking through the casinos, the fountains at Caesar's Palace, and I was fortunate enough to go see the Cirque du Soleil show Love, which was based around the Beatles. So obviously when people think of Vegas, the first things they think about are the casinos, the sort of backroom deals, the lights, the glitz, the glam, the show. So there is an obvious pick for this city, and that pick is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This is a young adult fantasy novel which takes place in the fictional city of New Rains, which is also known as the City of Sin. It's basically just YA Vegas. There are street gangs and casino families and a really unique magic system that has this sort of push and pull, like there has to be some sort of deal around the magic, which I really love because it means there's always like a consequence to having or using magic. This is a really action-packed novel. It follows our protagonist N as she goes looking for her mother in the city of New Rains, and the only lead that she has to find her mother is a boy named Levi, who is a con man, and it's not long before N gets wrapped up in this web of casino families and making deals and has to untangle herself from that, as well as hopefully find her mom. I highly recommend this book. It has such a unique form of magic. It's very action-packed. A lot of times I get really tired of the same YA fantasy tropes, and all of the books sort of follow this really formulaic pattern. This book does not do that, and this book definitely capitalizes on everything that Vegas is famous for. Sticking to the west of the United States, the next city that I want to talk about is Austin, Texas. I love Austin. I love the sort of underground vibe. I love how young it feels. I love how unique and independent and so much of its own that it is. I really love the culture of the South, the hats, the boots. I was in Austin for a conference, so unfortunately I didn't get to see as much of the city as I wanted to, but what I did see of it was really, really cool. I love stumbling across these places that I had never seen before. This graffiti park, for instance, was really, really cool. I came across a bar that had all of these murals of Bill Murray, which I love Bill Murray. Who doesn't love Bill Murray? Bill Murray's not even from Austin. He's from Chicago. But I don't know why he was in that bar. I don't know why there were so many murals of him, but I loved it. I loved watching all of the bats congregate under this bridge and fly off at the sunset. That was really cool. So for all of the unique and strange little features of Austin, the book that I want to recommend is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alera Sanz. I am amazed that I was able to get all of that out in one go. This is a YA contemporary following two teens, one named Aristotle and one named Dante, and it just kind of follows their relationship and friendship. This takes place in El Paso in the 80s, so not quite Austin, but I felt like it really did represent a lot of Texas culture and traditions, so I thought it would be a great recommendation for Austin. There's a lot of Aristotle taking his truck out into the middle of nowhere and just watching the stars, like you can kind of see on the cover. There's a lot of introspection. It's a very slow, beautiful novel, so if you're not super into slow-paced ones, you need more action-packed type stuff, I maybe wouldn't give this one a go, but if you like those more deeper sort of conversations, I would definitely highly recommend you check this one out. It's probably one of the best YA contemporaries I've ever read. I want to do a bonus, actually. So all around Austin, there are these Keep Austin Weird signs everywhere, and it's all on in all the gift shops and things like that. It's like a little motto of the city. So in keeping with the Keep Austin Weird mantra that's everywhere, mantra, I don't know. Anyway, in keeping with that, I want to also recommend the novelization of Welcome to Night Vale by Jeffrey Cranor and Joseph Fink. This is a bit of a cheat because it's actually a podcast, but it's in book form, so it counts. This one is set in the southwest of the United States in some undisclosed town. If you don't know what the podcast is about, basically it's this radio show. The host sort of tells you about this weird town called Night Vale, and there's all these like crazy, supernatural, sometimes dark and twisted things. It's basically like an H.P. Lovecraft set in the desert without all of the problematic elements of H.P. Lovecraft. This just fits the keep us in weird mantra so well, and it's such a strange podcast, but so enjoyable at the same time. Okay, the next city that I'm going to talk about has such a unique blend of nature and skyscrapers and being on the coast and just magical wonder and adventure. And that city is Wellington, New Zealand. So I was actually born in Wellington, New Zealand. Something about this city just makes me feel like there's magic right around the corner. When you're standing in downtown Wellington, you are amongst all of these giant buildings and all these friendly people, but at the same time, you can look up and see all of these mountains around you, and they're just full of trees and little dotted houses. And then you can walk, couple of blocks down and there's the coast and there's the ocean, and it's just the perfect blend. Why doesn't everybody live in Wellington, New Zealand? That's what I want to know. Why don't I live there? I should move. But basically, because of this blend of sort of the fantastical nature elements and the more modern day building city elements, I want to recommend the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. This series follows a bunch of children who sort of find these doors to other magical worlds and then have trouble when they have to come back and readjust to real life. So this is a novella series, the first one being Every Heart a Doorway. I am going to go ahead and say these are all just okay books for me, but the very last one in the series, which was Wayward Children series, which was In an Absent Dream, I really love that one. I gave that one like a 4 out of 5 stars. In an Absent Dream follows a child who finds a doorway to a goblin market where there are all these deals and trades, and they have to balance that world with their life back in the real world. For Wellington, I also have 2 other recommendations, and the first one is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I can't really explain this one very well, but it just reminds me of being in Wellington for some reason. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that when we were in Upper Hutt, I think, Lower Hutt, one of the huts. I'm not good at geography. I just looked it up. I'm pretty sure it was in Lower Hutt. But anyway, there was this cute little bookshop, and it was literally nestled amongst all of these trees, and it had an adjacent coffee shop, and it was so cute, and I just want to retire and own a bookshop in Wellington in the forest, because that is just the life. That bookshop felt really special because it just had all of these curated books, and every single one of them was like gold. For some reason, walking in that bookstore reminds me of this book. We've got Laszlo Strange, who is the main character in this book, and he's a librarian. He sort of gives me the type of feeling that I had when I was in that bookstore. Like, just his character would be somebody who in real life, like if he was to do anything in real life, he would be running a independent bookstore in the forest in New Zealand with a coffee shop attached. Like, that is this book down to a T. Listen, I'm trying not to offend my fellow Kiwis with this next recommendation, but I have to because you've brought it on yourselves, or rather, Peter Jackson brought it on you. But anyway, you gotta go read The Hobbit. You gotta go to Hobbiton. Listen, you're asking for it. Have you seen photos of your airport? Really? Really? It's magical. I've got to recommend The Hobbit for this one. Do I need to explain what this is about? No, you know what it is. I'm really excited for this next city because it is in my country of Australia, and that is Sydney. I was going to do Melbourne, but turns out there are not many books set in Melbourne, and I want to do Sydney. Let's talk about Sydney. They've got the bridge, they've got Bondi Beach, they've got the Opera House, they've got this really relaxed, casual t-shirt and jeans vibe, but then you like sort of dress it up for the nighttime, and there's this great like nightlife, and there's so many things to do, but it's also super casual at the same time, and you go see a footy game. And what I really like about Sydney, the couple times that I've been, is that there is a chance to sort of chill out and relax on the beach and soak in the sun, but at the same time there are so many things to do. Going to Taronga Zoo was fantastic. I was lucky enough to be able to climb the Harbour Bridge, which was really cool. So the book I want to recommend for this city, it's one of my favourite books, and that is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. Not only is Marcus Zusak an Australian author from Sydney, this is also set in Sydney. You're reading Marcus Zusak and you're like, that name sounds familiar. Well, maybe it will, because I have a whole shelf behind me of Marcus Zusak books. He also wrote Bridge of Clay, which came out last year, and he also wrote Book Thief, which is... So not only do I have, like, pretty much all of his books, and I wrote a thesis on... And I wrote a thesis on the Book Thief, which is why there's all these like super messy tabs. I have also the Fighting Reuben Wolf sort of series, and Bridge of Clay just came out. I haven't read that yet. But I also have both The Messenger and The Book Thief in French, which I can barely speak or read or understand. But I have them in French, and I'm going to get to them one day. Anyway, that's Marcus Zusak is not what this video is about. I'm sorry I got sidetracked. This book really captures the casual sort of city vibe of Sydney. Here we follow a taxi driver named Ed, who feels pretty insignificant, is in love with his best friend who doesn't really notice, and then one day he inadvertently stops a bank robbery, and he starts to get these messages in the mail that are written on little playing cards, and they have instructions, and Ed starts following those instructions, and he is trying to figure out who is sending them to him. I'm in love with this book. If you have read The Book Thief or any of Marcus Zusak's books, you'll know how beautiful his writing is, how simple and kind of humbly profound it can be. So highly recommend this one for Sydney. There's a lot of talks about having good coffee, good mates, lots of drinking, classic Sydney culture, classic Aussie culture. Are we ready now for the glitz and glam of Hollywood? We are talking Los Angeles. The red carpets, the beach, the Hollywood sign, the stars, all of it. I love LA. Whenever I travel to the United States, I usually pass through LAX. Sometimes I have layovers that last hours on hours, so I can have a little bit of time to walk down to Santa Monica Pier and soak it all in. Super fun city. Of course, though, the book that I'm going to recommend is going to be based on where all of the drama is, and that is in Hollywood. So I'm going to recommend The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. In this book, we are following a former Hollywood starlet named Evelyn, who was sort of like a Marilyn Monroe type back in the day. And we are in present day now, and she is telling her life story to this memoirist. She very famously had 7 husbands, and so this book is trying to answer the question, who was the love of Evelyn's life? If you haven't heard of this book already, I don't know where you've been living, what you've been doing. I recently read it in January. I was kind of late to it, but it definitely deserves all of the hype it has. It 100% is all about like Hollywood and the behind the scenes and the drama and everything that goes on that the public doesn't see versus what they do see. This is a very easy recommendation to make. I would recommend this to pretty much everyone. And how many books can you say, like, I would recommend that to pretty much everyone? Like, not many. I literally bought a green dress. This is embarrassing. I literally bought a green dress the other day because I was like, Evelyn Hugo would wear that. Anyway, this book mostly centers around LA and how this sort of glamorous perception that everybody has of the city and of her isn't always what it seems. I would also recommend Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which sort of half takes place in LA, but is more about the music industry rather than like Hollywood per se, but it still really has a lot of that LA entertainment world type feel to it. So I definitely also, it's also just a great book. So get your hands on these two if you haven't already. This next city, I actually have 3 recommendations because I actually lived close by to this city for quite a while. This city is home to a Kurt Vonnegut museum, one of the most famous motor races in the country, in the world actually, and one half of the Vlogbrothers. That city, of course, is Indianapolis. Woo! I lived nearby Indianapolis for the last couple of years as I went to college, and the city really has like a very quiet feel compared to some other places that I've been. Like, it's a very calm city. A lot of musicians and comedians and entertainment people sort of use Indianapolis as like a jumping off point to go on to Chicago or other cities. So Indianapolis is really where you can sort of catch people at their start, at their roots, at their start, before they go off and do all that sort of stuff. It is a really good city for finding and discovering new talent. So there's also a lot of parks and greenways around the city. And speaking of green, the first book that I'm going to recommend is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Obviously, John Green lives near Indianapolis, but he's also set this book in Indianapolis. So a lot of the things that make Indianapolis like cool are actually featured in this book. It features the White River, which runs through the city. It features Pogue's Run, which is the tunnel at the end of the book that they go to. It's kind of like an open sewer, which classic Indiana. It also has references to the newspaper there, the Indianapolis Star, which is a wonderful news organization. I know that some other John Green books are set in Indianapolis or around Indianapolis, but this one by far is the most Indianapolis-y. It's also my favorite John Green book. So some of, hit or miss with John Green for me, but this one was a hit. This was my 5 stars for me. This one follows a teen named Aza who is battling with some mental health issues like anxiety and OCD, but at the same time she is trying to figure out what happened to this missing billionaire to get a cash reward. This book is truly wonderful, and I've heard from people who do struggle with the same issues that Aza does struggle with, that it's a really, really good representation of anxiety and OCD. This is another one of my favorite YA contemporary books. This next recommendation for Indianapolis is mandatory because I have to do it, and they have a whole museum dedicated to this guy, and that is any book written by Kurt Vonnegut. I have 2 physical copies here. I have Slaughterhouse 5 somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I would highly recommend Breakfast of Champions and Slapstick. If you haven't read a Kurt Vonnegut novel before, they're a little weird to get into. It's very absurd writing, but there's always such a strong political commentary to it that it's 100% worth it. If you need to crawl through some Spark Notes or some online explanations, that's fine. I totally had to do that after I finished reading this one. The message that I got out of it afterwards was so worth it. So definitely check out some Kurt Vonnegut books. I recommend starting with Slaughterhouse 5 or this one here. Lastly, for this city, the book that I want to recommend is one that really highlights some of the outer areas of Indianapolis. And it's been a while since I've read this one, but it is We Are All Completely Besides Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler. This is a really important book to me. It changed the way that I see animals and humans, and basically this book has some ties to IU, and it's set in Indiana for parts of it. It is about a girl who is entering college, and even though she used to be a chatterbox when she was younger and would not stop talking, she now barely speaks at all. She used to have a sister named Fern and a brother named Lol. I don't know. Now they've both disappeared from her life, and she's struggling to deal with the consequences of that. This book will make you think about science and family and animals and the way that we integrate our lives with the natural world around us. I don't want to give away what happens in this book, but it's charming and sweet and a little quiet, but I think it's still important, and I think that's really emblematic of what Indianapolis is to me. That's it. That is all of my recommendations based on cities that I've been to. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody from those cities by recommending a bad book or recommending a book that they think has nothing to do with those cities, but these were all just based on my impressions of those places when I went there, so hopefully you can understand that. I hope that these books inspire you to keep traveling and keep finding new places. Even if they aren't large cities around you, just, look up on a map some places that you've never been before around your immediate area. Maybe, plan a day or plan an afternoon to drive that way and check some new places out. Travel is always good. I love traveling for the same reasons I love reading. I love finding new perspectives and new ways of life. So I think that's always really valuable to anybody. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you want a part 2 of cities that I've been to and recommendations, and I'll see you in the next one.